Are you about ready to talk about this this dude? I want to hear about this, Lodane. Kerry Thornley. Okay, need to use Skype. Okay. Do I have even Skype turned on? Check 2. Check. We can use Discord, but their audio has been choppy. Okay, I'm going to call you, Lodane. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? I'm calling. It's okay. I have Skype open. I'll just call. I'm calling. I'm calling Lodane.
Hello.
Hello, Lodane.
Hello. I'm still hearing the ringing sound for some reason. There we go. Hi.
Welcome, Lodane. You guys ever want to hear Lodane? I think we do.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, everyone.
And you sent me this YouTube thing to throw on.
Yeah. We can. No, we can do that later.
Okay.
Those are basically to showcase kind of the end of this guy's life. But I want to first talk about when he's young, and I am uniquely qualified to do so because I think I'm the only Discordian in your entire community. And as a it's not really a surprise. We tend to stick apart. That's one of our Katmas, which is sort of the opposite of a dogma, which I hate that one, but I can't argue with the people that wrote it because they're all dead, which is the case with most religions. But so Discordianism is this parody religion that it's a joke religion that some people take really seriously, though, and I find it fascinating.
Cool, that sounds cool. I have known nothing about this.
Oh, yeah. So Kerry Wendell Thornley is basically one of the founders of that. But what's funny is he's also kind of the Forrest Gump of the JFK conspiracy.
Okay.
He's everywhere at all times, it seems like. So, yeah, you already covered a little bit that he's kind of the Oswald double, according to Garrison. But he had a lot of other influences that are pretty worldwide, infecting the planet that a lot of people don't really realize. And I thought it would be interesting to talk about that as well. So,
yeah. Let's do it.
All right. Well,
have you cracked your Raid Energy total body fuel? Are you ready for this?
I'm on Diet Coke today,
okay.
but
that's acceptable. I'll allow it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally amped, though, I promise. So, okay, well, now that I've stated my expertise and we've mentioned the religion bit, I just want to send this to chat really quick. Spectacles, testicles, wallet, watch. You are all now Discordian popes, which is the equivalent of an ordained minister. I have the power to do that. Here's your wallet card. You can print it out, to show people your credentials. And you're no longer an atheist. You can't claim it. No, you are now a Discordian. You have no choice. So have fun with that. If you figure out what it is, let us all know. We tend to listen to the youngest members of the orders. So... All right, well, here's the thing.
Very nice. Congratulations, everyone.
Talking about Kerry Wendell Thornley requires a corkboard and red string, and I don't have it. So I'm just kind of going to go with the chronological. But I'm going to require your expertise, Rob. I know all of this from one angle, but you know a lot more of the JFK conspiracy in general. Like, I think you've watched the Oliver Stone movie more than once.
I've watched the pertinent parts. I haven't watched the whole thing, although I really want to now. I really do want to see it.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, you need to see it because they never say his name, but there actually is a bit of the movie where they portray Garrison's like double Oswald theory. So basically it's Kerry, Wendell, Thornley in the movie, but it's played by Frank Whaley, and I don't know if you guys all remember who this guy is, but he's like that guy, and he would have been like the Brat Pack, but he wasn't popular enough. So there he is. He was supposed to play Oswald originally in the Oliver Stone movie.
Okay.
But
I recognize this guy.
Yeah.
He's in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, he's in so much stuff.
And I remember Broken Arrow as well, the John Woo film Broken Arrow from 95, I believe.
I don't remember the name of it, but he was in some movie with Jennifer Connelly way back in the day where they basically raided a Target after hours, yeah.
He's very much a bad guy, that's right.
Oh yeah. So he was originally supposed to play Oswald, but I guess Oliver Stone forgot that he promised it and cast the role differently. So they had him play the double instead. And then he went on in a Lifetime movie or something. I don't know. It was from Oswald's wife's point of view. In another movie, he actually did play Oswald. So yeah, there you go. So there's a lot of synchronicities, I don't know.
Yeah. I see the resemblance.
Yeah. So, but yeah. The whole Discordian thing is kind of how Kerry Wendell Thornley's career started. But what he did actually that affected the world most is by forming the Discordian Society. These are all a bunch of pranksters and jokesters, and they took it too far. I remember
seems like a very 60s phenomenon.
Oh yeah, it's totally 60s, and a lot of this is basically all counterculture stuff, psychedelic stuff. Eventually, Tim Leary joins this scene.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So he forms this Discordian society pretty early in his life. He's hanging out with this guy that he met in high school named Greg Hill, and it's totally mythologized in our community. There's this moment where they're really young and in college, and they go to the bowling alley and they're chilling there, and they start talking about life and what it all means and everything. And Thornley was like, well, the world's pretty organized, right? So it's got to be about order, right? And then Greg Hill was like, no, actually, I think that everything is chaos and order is superficially imposed on it. And sometimes that all gets out of whack. And that conversation ended up leading them to writing the Principia Discordia, which is kind of
because I know you're a Big Lebowski. You like Big Lebowski. Do you think there's some kind of crossover there with the Big Lebowski stuff with the dude and Walter in the bowling alley and stuff? Do you think that's intentional?
I do describe myself actually as a dudist to Discordian most of the time, because Lebowski inspired a parody religion as well.
Yeah.
But it's based on Taoism, as to where Discordianism is actually based on Zen Buddhism. So, if you're into Eastern philosophy and you have a sense of humor, you should check those religions out. It's right up there with Subgenius and Flying Spaghetti Monster and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. You can continue.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm talking way too much. I was giving you a moment. Okay, so investigating this guy is actually a little tricky, though, because there is a guy out there named Loveshade. You guys can look all this up if you want, but he owns CarryThornley.com. He puts out all of this misinformation. He is also kind of into the younger people and stuff, but it's one guy with this disinformation campaign that he just keeps going with, and it's just little bits of information that end up it's in Wikipedia and various other places. So all the fandoms and wikias associated with Discordianism and stuff like that are all infected by this guy. He owns most of them under bunch of names and sock puppets. So real tricky getting clean information about this guy. But I can recommend. There's a guy named Adam Gorightly. He's a Discordian historian, of which I'm a bit of an acolyte, but he's definitely an expert. His stuff is trustworthy, but I just want to help you guys wade through this a little bit because so basically, after writing this silly underground magazine, pretty much, the Principia Discordia, and forming this jokey religion, and having this little cabal of people that all wanted to participate in this, he went off to the Marine Corps, and that's where he met Lee Harvey Oswald. They served together. They were kind of buddies, but, like, how much they were buddies, that story ends up kind of getting, I don't know, in earlier days it seems like he was like, yeah, I knew him, we were buddies, but, you know, and then it just, later on it became exaggerated, so, but, yeah, that's where he met Lee Harvey Oswald. He met a guy named Bud Simcoe at the same time, and, you know, he started writing this novel about, he found Oswald kind of fascinating, and Oswald was a little bit of a discontent in the Marines, and he got dishonorably discharged. So, at the time, Kerry was like, oh, I'm going to write about this guy, and he started writing a novel called The Idle Warriors. And it was about a guy who defects from the United States and goes to Russia. And then, like, that happened later. Yeah. Like, so it was like he predicted it. He always said, oh, I felt like my character, like, popped off the page and killed the president. Because he basically wrote this novel all about what was gonna happen before it happened. Which, anytime you do that, it's going to put you in a situation where someone's going to eventually investigate you.
Sure, like, especially when they're investigating a major crime like the assassination of the United States president. They're going to be like, what did this guy know, and when did he know it?
Like, if you wrote a book that really detailed 9/11, like, super well, and then 9/11 happened, like, they're coming to knock on your door at some point. Sure, yeah. So that got him, that's how he got Garrison read the whole novel. So, for those of you that don't really know that much about JFK conspiracy stuff, Jim Garrison was this district attorney out of New Orleans, and that's
Kevin Costner's character in the film.
Yes, yeah. And oh my god, in the movie, for those of you that are anime fans, like, his glasses shine like anime glasses so many times. It's so amazing. I actually, like, photoshopped his finger pushing his glasses up because that just makes it perfect. Oh my god, it's so good. But yeah, that's who the whole movie is about. He's why we have a JFK conspiracy. So JFK got assassinated, the government, you know, transformed as it does, like, they moved the vice president in, but, you know, that's where Garrison thinks that all of these conspirators came in. Anti-Castro Cubans, working with the CIA, working with big business to get rid of JFK because he was going to make all these big changes, and they didn't like that.
And I happen to agree with this. And it's interesting, too, because this gets explored in the movie, but for as much as Oswald was a solid patsy for them, as a fall guy, the existence of the Zapruder film basically rendered their whole story that they were trying to sell the American people completely ridiculous because everyone could just watch the movie and realize that it didn't match up with the story that they were trying to explain to people. But it's funny because even that happened and they were like, no, we're not changing our story. This is what happened. And everyone was just like, all right, fine, I guess. But it's like, we can see the movie and just see clearly that it doesn't match up to the official story of what you're saying. Back and to the left, that's right.
Yeah, back and to the left. There's so much testimony that they didn't include. You know, as documents are being revealed and being declassified, we have found out that LBJ went to, you know, various people investigating this in the Warren Commission, and just kind of dropped the hint, like, hey guys, you know, if you find that, like, Cuba's responsible for this, or, like, China or Russia, that's going to cause a war that I really am not in the mood.
Yeah, we don't want to go that. We're anti-communist and we want to we want to keep the Cold War going, though. We don't want a hot war.
Yeah, so, like, he didn't want all that bloodthirst and everything.
He doesn't even have to go to the Warren Commission because Allen Dulles, who many believe carried out this assassination,
was
on the Warren Commission investigating himself, and lo and behold determined that he was not responsible.
Yeah, so that's the funny thing. Like, there's always been questions like, was Kerry Thornley CIA? Was Oswald CIA? A lot of people kind of lean in on the fact that Oswald, like, defected to Russia. He tried to become a citizen. He failed. Like, he didn't pass all their tests or whatever, but he still stayed there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then after that, he came back. Now, during a Cold War, as I understand it from, like, just what I know of the intelligence community, you go over there, you're now an asset. Like, they want to know everything that you know, and we know he volunteered all that. So we know he became a KGB asset. And then he came back to America and didn't go to jail.
Yeah,
so
very, very curious.
That means that the CIA or another intelligence agency got a hold of him, and he became an asset for them. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the theory.
Fake defector, as Coal Mine is saying. Yeah.
This is all, it's all speculative, but that's kind of the working theory on that. So, but how long was Oswald, like, in touch with the CIA? Like, that's a question that Kerry Wendell Thornley brings up, because when they served together, they served with this guy named Bud Simcoe. And Kerry Wendell Thornley wrote that, if he had some kind of intelligence babysitter when he was in the service, it was definitely that guy. Because with his superior officer, they maintained, like, top secret security and classified files for their squadron. Like, that would have been the guy. That would have been the guy watching them. But, again, that's speculation. But fact is, they served together. They were kind of buddies. He wasn't exactly friendly with... Oswald wasn't exactly friendly with everyone in his unit. And Kerry wasn't super hostile to him, so they had kind of a working relationship. But one day there was supposed to be this parade, and everyone was so frustrated because it was like hurry up and wait situation.
Yeah.
And, while Oswald is grousing, Kerry says, oh, well, when the revolution happens, I guess you won't have to, like, wait for these parades. And Oswald, by that, felt so betrayed. And he was like, not you too, Thornley. Damn it, and, like, stormed off. That was the end of their friendship, and he got discharged, like, shortly after. So, but that's Kerry's story. So, he writes this book. It's very interesting. He's discharged from the Marines. He goes to L.A. He hangs out with his friend Greg Hill that he wrote the Principia Discordia with in New Orleans. And this is where they meet a guy named Slim Brooks and a guy who mostly just went by the name Brother-in-Law, whose other name was Gary Kersine. And so basically mob. That's when Oswald returned from Russia, and that was, June 1962 is when Oswald came back from Russia.
Okay.
And it was November of 1963 when JFK was assassinated. So part of the problem is that the 33-page disposition that Kerry Wendell Thornley ended up giving, like, his testimony was 33 pages for the Warren Commission. They were just super interested in, everything he knew about him, but Garrison was just like, no, they look too much alike. They've been seen in all these places. They got one form of testimony of someone saying, oh no, he was over at their house all the time. They knew all the same people in New Orleans, but yet never ran into one another. Like, okay. So, but he, everywhere in the JFK conspiracy, he tends to come up in one way or another. So Garrison took the 33 pages of testimony and was like, I'm gonna get this guy on perjury. And Thornley had just moved to Florida and had to come and actually answer, like, to federal perjury charges as a result of all of this, because Garrison, a lot of people were kind of painting Garrison as being a little unstable at this point.
Sure.
But when he got replaced by Harry Connick Sr., it's actually Harry Connick Sr. that dropped the charges on Kerry Thornley for perjury. So I always thought that was a little interesting. Like, that guy, definitely cut from a different cloth than Garrison. So I can't believe you haven't seen the Oliver Stone movie.
Yeah, I know. I should get on that, right? It's because I have kids, and I just never have I can't sit down and watch a 3.5 hour movie. There's no way I can do it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get to the point where I can, but It's been difficult the last 5 years to catch up on this kind of stuff. I've seen the relevant parts, though.
I actually tried to cut like the 5-minute clip where they showed the Oswald double apparently went to like a car dealership and drove the car super crazy, didn't buy the car, was like, hell no, when the revolution comes, maybe I should go to Russia and buy a car, and said all these nonsensical things, and was basically shouting, like, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald! So, like, it was weird testimony like that all of these, like, duplicate Oswalds started popping off, but, I don't know who the other candidates were that well, because that's really not my territory, but I can say that article I just dropped in chat covers it super well for anyone who's more interested in the Oswald duplicate theory. But there's competing evidence of who was where. Okay. Thornley spent some time in Mexico City, which we all know Mexico City is like a huge like espionage hub in the 60s at this point because of its proximity to America and, kind of softer view on communism at the time.
Yeah,
so
Coal Mine just asks, is this the Mexico City Oswald double? Yeah.
Yes, this is.
Yeah.
Yes. He actually rented an apartment from John Spencer, who is a friend of Clay Shaw's. So that was one of the things that Garrison held against him. Like, he's like, oh, no. Clay Shaw, John Spencer, all these people. And he did. That's the weird thing, is like, Thornley started recalling a lot of conversations, just like bullshit hypothetical conversations that he had in New Orleans, and he realized that there were people basically asking him how he would assassinate JFK, and then a lot of that came true, and he thinks that, Oswald was being set up as a patsy the whole time. Yeah, so...
It's interesting, too, because, like... a lot of this confusion could have been cleared up by Oswald, and lo and behold, he got taken out, and we never got the full story. What a crazy coincidence that is, as well, right?
Yeah, I really just don't understand. Like, there's basically what Garrison said in the movie is that there was a coup, there was a silent American coup, and that we're no longer the same government. So that's really hard to live with.
Yeah, and sure.
I'm sad that most people don't know that. But it makes you sound like a tinfoil hat person to.
Yeah, like we've been talking about, that's deliberate. It's a deliberate way to obfuscate these things and ensure that anyone that asks questions about any of these conspiracies, gets lumped into this category. That's been a deliberate project by the intelligence community to ensure that phenomenon exists.
Yeah, and Thornley actually believed that, like, suspicion is a form of control. He wanted to kind of do a mass deprogramming of the world by, like, snapping everyone into it. He wanted everyone to wake up at once, basically.
Well, Tim Leary talked about that shit as well, right? That's how they thought acid was, like, the key to that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, you take acid even once, and you're just like, man, if everyone took this just once, like, it would solve a whole lot of problems.
I know the feeling, yeah.
Yeah, like,
I definitely would point to my experience as a teen with psychedelics as putting me on sort of the path to questioning a lot of things about the way that society and the economy works and all this stuff. I don't think that's not a coincidence, I don't think.
So, speaking of Leary, actually, it's upcoming, so I don't know exactly when, but you guys should take a look at Kit O'Connell. I'll actually just put the name in chat. This is his Twitter handle. Okay, I think I got that right. So, Kit O'Connell is going to be putting out a zine soon about the psychedelic basically scene and what it would kind of be like now that we're so close to legalization in a lot of ways, and how their lives would be different. I'm personally writing a bit about Robert Anton Wilson and how he had to eulogize Tim Leary on, like, Bill Maher's Politically Incorrect, like, the week that Tim Leary died, like, before. Like, they all knew he was dying. And then, within years, ended up succumbing to post-polio syndrome himself and becoming a big cannabis advocate. But man, he hated Clinton. And I kind of wonder what his opinion would be these days with all of this like Epstein stuff coming out and all of that. Sure. But yeah, that's a little plug. Go follow Kit. He's a good guy. He talks about a lot of good stuff. He's total anarchist and he's into mutual aid. But he'll be putting out a zine that I will have a bit in. But yeah, but they're all related. All of these people knew one another, and so yeah.
Let me know if this is a random connection, Lodane. But because kind of talking about this, the Discordians, the 60s movements that went too far, what that makes me think of is Manson family, and I'm 100% certain that the CIA had their fingers in all that stuff as well, the whole Manson murders and the end of the hippie movement, the end of the 60s. I'm sure that they were absolutely connected to that as well. And it kind of reminds me of a similar sort of phenomenon.
Yeah, well, Robert Anton Wilson used to say that, like, they found out that there were roughly 5,000 operatives across the various intelligence agencies. They admitted this in Chicago during, like, the civil rights era and, like, the anti-war movement. And he said, man, I've never been to a rally that had more than 5,000 people. Was I the actual only radical in Chicago,
Chicago, the fucking Black Panthers, Fred Hampton and stuff. They had people in there too, and that they assassinated Fred Hampton using their help.
Oh yeah, all of these people were also kind of associated with like, the Wobblies and the Weather Underground people, like all of that stuff. Like they got really into that stuff. And these people formed a nationwide web, the Discordian people, and they were all corresponding with one another and creating these campaigns. And that's where this weird Illuminati stuff starts kicking off. Because these people are so tied together, they were able to achieve some funky stuff. So there were a couple people working for Playboy as editors. One of them was Robert Anton Wilson. The other one was a author named Robert Shea. He's really cool. His son, Mike Shea, aka Sly Flourish, is really cool if you're into tabletop like D&D. But they all have really cool sons who don't want anything to do with this stuff. They're like, oh no, I want to like do my own path. Like Kerry Thornley has a son named Craig who is like, yeah, I love my dad as a dad. I don't know about all that other stuff though. You guys are weird. So, which, fair. But as a result, they were able to pull off this Illuminati shit. Like, the Illuminati was not on anybody's tongues at the time. Nobody was really talking about it. It was like an old Bavarian thing of Adam Weishaupt, and it was about Jesuits and Masons, and it was all back in the 1700s, and no one really gave a shit about it. But these guys started all this Illuminati shit. That's why this is somewhat the most destructive religion in a lot of ways. I mean, we can argue about Catholic.
Yeah.
All right, so there's this, there are letter sections in Playboy, like the Playboy Forum, and that's what these editors covered. And Thornley started getting investigated by Garrison, and they started Operation Mindfuck. Operation Mindfuck is kind of a fake news campaign. One of the more harmless versions of Operation Mindfuck is if there's a celebrity or politician that you don't like, and they're going to get on their soapbox about something, and they hate drugs, send them a letter about this plant that the kids smoke sometimes when they run out of marijuana and it has all these crazy effects, and just don't just give the Latin name for it, and watch them go get up on their pulpit and, try and pass some law on the state level banning this shit. It's catnip.
Yeah.
It's catnip. It's a bait and switch. But that's one of the more harmless ones. But when Garrison started investigating Thornley, they started sending him letters of like induction to the Bavarian Illuminati. And I mean, it's basically like a troll army, like the 60s, 70s, equivalent of a troll army, getting all this correspondence, all these fake leads. And they put a letter in the Playboy Forum. It was between two other letters. One was, do gun owners have small cocks? The one after it was talking about ball damage from heavy petting. So this is Playboy Forum, but in the middle it said, hey, are all assassinations in like the last 20 years actually caused by the Bavarian Illuminati? Are they actually running everything behind the scenes? Is there a secret cabal of people that are running everything in this country? Is there a shadow government? Nobody was talking about any of these things at the time, so as a result, like, I kind of feel like Discordianism caused some of the worst shit going on in our country right now. Welcome to my religion. Yeah, so, and you're all Discordian popes now, so you can't really help it. You're a part of this, too. Okay. Welcome.
We're part of the conspiracy now, too. My gosh.
But, I mean, you know, like, this guy knew, like, Kerry, Wendell, Thornley, knew Guy Bannister, roughly, like, he basically knew Clay Shaw, or he was mutuals with them. Most of these people were like huge nightlife people in New Orleans, though. It was hard not to run into them. That's why everyone thought it was really weird that Kerry and Oswald never ran into one another. They were never seen in the same place, you know. I don't know. So, yeah. But as he aged and he started recalling things, you know, there was a lot of drugs involved, and everyone, like, always associated him with conspiracies and didn't really, like, let him get out of this shadow. His mental health really started declining, and you know, as a result, like, he started thinking that maybe some of his friends were CIA operatives. He got diagnosed with schizophrenia, but he refused any treatment for it. He started getting taken advantage of, in my opinion, allegedly in Grand Theft Auto Online by a woman named Sandra London. So we're actually going to see a little bit of her megalomania in a video here in a moment, if we have time for that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The one that's in our DMs there?
Yeah, so the first one is actually a younger, slightly, I mean, he's an old man at this point, but this is him at, like, a bookstore, basically discussing in a way more orderly fashion the majority of what I just discussed. Totally welcome to watch that at 1.25. But, okay, so the other two are actually him on Current Affair, the tabloid show. Yeah. And that's the end of his life, basically. Like, he's been homeless at this point, and he's just like, yeah, I was totally in on it. I totally was in on that conspiracy. I would have killed him myself. Like, he gets really wacky. But, yeah, Sandra London basically was kind of pushing him in that direction at that time.
Okay, interesting. Well, and it's weird, too, because, like, how are you not paranoid about having your life being infiltrated by CIA agents at that point when you've been surrounded by that shit for your whole fucking adult life, pretty much? It would be weird. Yeah, it would be weird to not be paranoid about that.
Yeah, and who knows, like, what... That's the problem, is with MK Ultra and all that stuff happening at the same time, all they were able to actually accomplish that we know of is memory loss. They were able to cause memory loss in people. So, like, it's real hard not to think, like, am I a sleeper agent? Like, what did they do to me? Like, and this is an age of the unknown. Like, information traveled much slower. You couldn't just Google, like, symptoms of mind control. You know, like, it wasn't there.
Well, MK Ultra shit too. It's like, that's not a conspiracy. Like, we know be for a fact that they were doing these experiments, and we there's certain stuff we know, but, like, when you start pulling at those strings, it's like, well, how much do we don't know about what they accomplished during that period and who was involved in this? Like, we were talking about Jack Ruby, how in the chat we're talking about how he had, like, a so-called, like, psychotic break before the trial, so they couldn't testify to the Warren Commission. Like, we know that they were doing this shit. So it's I don't think it's pretty logical to kind of start making these connections, whether it's with Thornley, whether it's with the Manson family, all this stuff. I mean, it's like this CIA had their fingers in all this stuff.
And the Mafia, too. That's the funny thing, is, like, I actually left it off of the playlist because it was a little out there, but it's like a DJ Vlad or whatever interview with, is his name Gianni Russo? Like, this guy kind of takes credit for everything, it seems like, but he talked about the Mafia's role in the JFK. It's not a direct connection, so I left it off, but the Mafia, Mafia...
certainly the Kennedy family was tied up with the Mafia. We know that for sure. I mean, that's how they made their money, was through that kind of, like, organized crime, basically.
And we literally know that the Mafia was involved with, what was it? Is it Mongoose, the one where they tried to kill Castro? But, you know, they tried to kill Castro over and over and over. They hit up the Mafia. That was one of the attempts. They're like, hey, can we just order a hit? And they're like, nah, too dangerous, man.
Yeah.
But, like, they did still continue to work with them. So, man, you can't even trust, like, the criminal organization to not be agents. Like, what world are we living in? Like, I want like 80s Cloak and Dagger back, like when Ruskies were communists, and that was cool. Damn you, Pizza Hut.
Yeah, I know. Fucking Gorbachev. I know. Believe me, I know.
All right, so I don't want to be Dane. Go ahead and show our friend Thornley here. And as I said, it's totally listenable at 1.25. Sorry for the VHS garbage audio, folks.
No problem. But okay, I'm gonna put it on 1.25. Here we go.
Kennedy or Oswald?
If you want, yeah. I was in the Marines with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Popping open a deck.
All my life I've been fighting this tendency to be typecast as Oswald's Marine Corps buddy, because I feel like I'm not becoming known in my own right when I become known as simply as somebody who knew Oswald. But I was in the Marines with Oswald, and even though at the time of the Kennedy assassination, when it was announced that Oswald was involved, I at first assumed that he was innocent. Later on, because of the reports in the newspapers, I had great faith in the free press back in those days, and in competition and the free market of ideas and all that. I thought that since they were all saying that he was guilty, I assumed that he was. I even wrote a book to that effect. I testified for the Warren Commission. And I wrote a book to the effect that trying to explain why Oswald assassinated Kennedy. It was called Oswald. It was published in 1965. And then along about 1975, to be exact, when Watergate was really in full swing, I began to realize that these Watergate burglars had a lot in common with some people I knew in New Orleans that were always talking about assassinating Kennedy. After it happened, I assumed that they didn't have anything to do with it, because for one thing, the one of them that I trusted the most told me that they didn't. However, it became very obvious with Watergate that they had been involved. It was two men that I knew in New Orleans, and one of them was just like a Watergate plumber, and also had mafia connections. He knew a whole lot about the CIA. He was just like detailed stuff about CIA operations that hadn't been published then. And he knew a whole lot about what was going to happen in the future. He said he was going to make Nixon president after he assassinated Kennedy. He said he talked about wanting to see something like what we now think of as the Manson family among the Bohemians and the hippies. He was a Nazi, and he talked a lot about how Bohemia and Hitler had been in his early days. How I forget what the Viennese word for a Bohemian was back then, but Hitler wore his coat over his shoulders without his arms in the sleeves, and sat around in coffee houses in Vienna a lot, and so on and so forth. So this guy was talking at that time about creating somebody like a Charles Manson, like a hippie Hitler, so to speak. And
interesting.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know what his motives were, but he just anyway, he talked about killing Martin Luther King. He talked about any number of things. He talked about fighting an Asian race instead of invading Cuba, because Castro was a white man and he didn't want to invade. He didn't want the United States to go to war with the Cubans, because so many of them were white people. But he thought if there was a war against communism, it should be against an Asian race instead. He knew. So by 1975, I began to realize that this guy that I thought was a nut knew what he was talking about, and was probably centrally involved in the assassination conspiracy. And so I went, at that time Reginald Leeds here in town was investigating the Martin Luther King assassination. He was Commissioner of Public Safety at that time, and I went to him, to his assistant, and told him what I knew, what I could remember right off the top of my head about this guy down in New Orleans, who had used the same word that some guy in Atlanta had used about killing Martin Luther King and framing a jailbird for it. This guy talked about framing a jailbird for the Kennedy assassination. And I had said, why do you want to frame a jailbird? And I wound up saying, well, why don't you frame some communist? And he smirked. He couldn't even look at me. He had to look down at the floor because he was smirking so much, because he knew that's what I was going to say, and he was already planning to frame Oswald. So it was really a weird experience for me, because I was writing this novel based on Oswald. When Oswald defected to the Soviet Union, I decided to write a novel about a Marine who becomes disenchanted with the U.S. and goes to the Soviet Union. And so it was like the hero, and I didn't like Kennedy. I was extremely anti-Kennedy myself, because I was so much into Ayn Rand and laissez-faire capitalism, objectivism, and Kennedy was the arch villain of our movement at that time. And it was like the hero of my novel jumped up off the pages of my book and shot the president. And it was very weird. However, I thought it was a coincidence. I wound up dismissing it as a coincidence until 1975. In the meantime, though, more coincidences had accumulated. I had met Guy Bannister, a suspect in the Garrison probe. I had met Clay Shaw 2 weeks before the assassination, and a discussion of my book about Oswald, the Idle Warriors, was involved. And I had met David Ferry, and I had met a number of other of Garrison suspects, a stringer for Life magazine named Dave Chandler. And so it was like I had even worked in a restaurant where Oswald had lived in his youth with his mother. No, back many years earlier. Anyway, I worked there later, and right around the time of the Kennedy assassination, I was working in that restaurant. In fact, I celebrated the Kennedy assassination with the guy who owned that restaurant. And recently there was a current affair piece.
He's really got that physical, the movements and the weird. It seems like his nervous system has been probably impacted by his lifestyle. It seems like.
On me, and they interviewed me, and they also interviewed him,
I mean,
briefly.
The thing is, he's not. If this whole video, I've watched this whole video before, and he's kind of annoyed with this guy with the slow questions at first, but it's at this point that he kind of starts like waking up and getting more lively and everything. This is some of the best evidence of Thornley and how he was before things got really bad. In fact, this video plays a heavy part in. Let me find my notes. I'm sorry, I literally have a legal pad full of notes here.
That's good. I mean, we don't have the corkboard on the red string, so we got to go with what we have.
Yeah, everyone gets some ASMR from the paper. But there was a guy who just made something on the BBC. Oh yeah, it was called "Can't Get You Out of My." It was the Kylie Minogue song. Can't Get You Out of My Head.
The Adam Curtis thing.
Yeah, it's on the BBC. Episode 1 and episode 4 both feature Kerry, Wendell, Thornley. Like this video, the longer form of it with other stuff, because he got really into this stuff. So if you are one of our UK viewers, go ahead and watch that on the BBC. It's actually kind of decent, but it doesn't get. I don't know. It's actually pretty decent. It's okay. So, or use a VPN, guys. So it's not bad.
Okay.
But yeah, that's episode 1, and I believe episode 4 features that stuff. So, but yeah, it's like a super long interview, without, this is just the JFK excerpt. So,
yeah.
But this is the good stuff. But
okay,
yeah.
I'm going to continue then, unless you had something else.
No, other than the wacky current affairs that comes later. So that's 10 minutes. Again, can be watched at higher speed if you like. So,
all right. Okay, I'm going to continue with this one.
Okay.
Carlos Castillo. That restaurant was a pool hall at the time. Oswald and his mother lived right upstairs, in the same building. So there were meaningful coincidences and meaningless coincidences, but there were just enormous numbers of coincidences, and a lot of them were pointed out to me by Jim Garrison's assistants and by Jim Garrison himself when he came after me in 1969, accusing me of, or actually 1968 and 69, accusing me of being a CIA agent, and so on and so forth, and being involved in the assassination. At that time, I didn't think I was, but I could not explain all these weird coincidences. And anyhow, when Watergate happened, and when I began to think about these conversations with this weird character, this weird bald-headed Nazi acquaintance of mine, it began to make sense, because he knew all these different things. He knew I was going to Mexico that summer. I had planned to stay in Mexico for a month. I came back a little early before the month was over. Oswald was in Mexico City. He knew all that stuff, and so he could have arranged most of those coincidences. He could have arranged for me to meet Guy Bannister. He was probably working with Guy Bannister. He could have arranged for me to meet Clay Shaw and David Perry and so on and so forth, because they all were arranged meetings. It was almost like these people were going out of their way to shake hands with me, and that was pretty much it. So it was very strange. It still seems very strange to me, although these days I feel like I understand a lot more about the assassination than I did then, of course.
How do you think they got Oswald to be in that building on that day at that time? Did he actually think he was going to...
He worked there. He worked there.
He worked in the building?
Yeah. Ruth Payne got him a job there. Ruth Payne's husband works for Bell Aircraft as one of the top Nazis. General, I forget whether it's Dornberger or Dornberg, anyway.
Yeah, we talked about this one last time. Bell Aircraft, who made billions and billions of dollars with the unlimited blank check from the U.S. government as the Vietnam War escalated after the Kennedy assassination.
was involved with Bell Aircraft.
Yeah,
Bell Helicopter
there's
was
some
about to go out
weird
of business
stuff
until-
that did happen that I forgot to mention, actually. Like, there's some evidence that, the government might have actually had Oswald as an agent, as we discussed earlier. One of those things is that the CIA told their agents not to answer any queries about Oswald's time in Mexico, and that visit was 8 weeks before the assassination. He literally went to the Mexican City Russian embassy and walked in, got some postcards, and walked out. And, some intelligence people think that those postcards were to indicate, like, meeting places, like whatever was on the front of the card. But the only one that would have been plausible, according to this independent thing I watched recently, would have been this bull arena. And, like, Kerry Wendell Thornley's most popular picture is him with the rose in his mouth. So sometimes I kind of wonder if that's, like, his Olay, if he's like, hey, that was actually me,
Yeah.
It's really hard to say, but there were definitely government and corporate interests going on. Big business definitely was 1/3 of the, like, pie diagram of why JFK got assassinated, allegedly in a conspiracy theory with our hats on. So,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but all of these big interests had paid off all of these politicians, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to continue.
until the Vietnam War, and then they made enormous amounts of money building helicopters.
That's right. That's right, Kerry. They did.
I realize it's speculation, but I mean, I can't help but wonder. I mean, what? He was just there at the same time. I mean, he was totally set up, or did he have some notion he was going to?
In my opinion, he was not on the 6th floor at the time of the Kennedy assassination. He claimed that he was on the 2nd floor when the shots rang out. There is a secretary whose testimony appears in the 26 volumes that was not quoted in the Warren Report. I was quoted 4 times. I had known Oswald since 1959, but they quoted me 4 times. This woman spoke to him immediately after the assassination. They didn't quote her. She said that Oswald walked up to her right after the assassination on the 2nd floor and said, "What happened?" because phones were ringing on her desk and she was answering. And she told him. There's a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald standing on the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository a few seconds before the shots were fired. His shirt is unbuttoned. They said the Warren Commission said it was Billy Lovelady, not Oswald. Billy Lovelady evidently looks something like Oswald. Billy Lovelady says he was wearing a red and white vertically striped shirt buttoned to the collar that day. This guy in the picture has a shirt unbuttoned about like that with a white t-shirt on underneath, which was what Oswald was wearing. He's obviously, if he wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald, he was somebody that looked exactly like Lee Harvey Oswald and was dressed exactly like Lee Harvey Oswald for even purposes of even greater deception in order to further confuse the public. But whatever the hell he was, or whoever he was, I went and stood where he was standing. The parade, if you see the Oliver Stone movie, you'll notice the car with Kennedy in it was moving very slowly as it passed the school book depository. It had just made that turn at the corner of Elm and Houston, and it was moving extremely slowly. All right, from where Oswald was standing in that photograph, the president's car would not have been visible after it passed the book depository. It would have disappeared behind a concrete abutment that blocks the view between Oswald and the area where the president was shot. So Oswald would have turned around after the motorcade passed him at that point, and would have made the very short journey up the stairs, and would have been on the 2nd floor at the time of the assassination, just as he said he was, just as the secretary said he was, and just as the photograph indicates he probably was.
Crazy.
So to your knowledge, he couldn't have possibly been on the 6th floor firing that shot?
No way, unless the person on the 2nd floor was somebody deliberately impersonating him who looked like him. There were Oswald doubles. There were people who went out and impersonated him. Most of them did not look like him, however.
And in addition to what he's saying, too, which also gets outlined in the Oliver Stone movie, even if he was on the 6th floor, even if he was attempting to do the shot, that in and of itself, as is established in this movie fairly convincingly, was like just not physically possible. It wasn't physically possible for like anyone to make this shot that they're saying that he did. To say nothing of the fact that in the video we see that the shot comes from a completely different direction.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, the Oliver Stone movie was based primarily on one book, but he did a lot of interviews and he read a lot of other books. And Kerry Thornley wrote not only The Idle Warriors, which is like a fictionalized version of Oswald that he predicted would kill the president somehow, but also he wrote one after Oswald died, like basically trying to figure out how this happened, how he went through such a massive change within 1 year, knowing the guy so well, and then, like, you know, a year or two later, this guy's like ready to kill the president, like for real. And he didn't understand how such a swift change happened. That was one of the books. I think he wrote a third one as well, other than his recollections about all these conversations, which I think is called the Dreadlock Confessions, if I remember correctly. It was distributed in kind of a strange manner. It was distributed in kind of an underground press manner. But, you know, there's actually some other weird stuff that, like, Garrison's crew did some sleazy stuff, like talking about, like, photo doctoring and, you know, like maybe body doubles and weird stuff like that. Garrison's team investigated Thornley so bad, I'm going to send it to chat, but they actually, like, doctored a photo to make Thornley look more like Oswald for some reason, and they didn't explain to the retoucher why they were doing it. But I think they were going to, like, try and take it around and be like, have you seen this guy? That's my theory, but yeah, so, like, I mean, we're not above that. Even in the 60s, when everything was kind of, like, you know, rough, like, they totally passed off false evidence and all sorts of things like that. So,
man,
sorry, I'm a little bundle of nervous energy today. I'm just kind of all over the place.
I'm just like, it's just amazing, because I wasn't familiar with Kerry Thornley before this, so considering the amount that we've been talking about the assassination, it's interesting. It's really interesting to get his insight about this. You're doing very good, Lodane. Don't be nervous. You're doing excellent.
All right. And, you know, and here's, like, a decent summary. Like, this blog's a little sus, but they do an okay job summarizing, like, how all of this Illuminati stuff really did just, like, come from basically, like, all of these Discordian pranks. As I said, that started in Playboy, but then became this thing that just harassed Garrison and has gotten out of control. Actually, some Discordians have proposed something called Operation Mindfix, because we are in a land of fake news, and it's no longer effective to prank, and satire's kind of dead. So, you know, some of us are more dedicated to truth, which is why, again, don't go to kerrythornley.com. Don't trust anything Sandra London puts out. There's a lot of disinformation about this man. Some of it's harmless trivia, some of it's not. But that's all associated with this sock puppet master named Loveshade, who I have fought on fandom/wikia myself. He tried to take over my Illuminatus trilogy fandom, which I'm the administrator of. One of my favorite novels. It's an encyclopedic Joycean novel written by, again, Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea while they were at Playboy. Because then, after they published that Illuminati letter, they started getting a whole bunch of crackpot letters, and they started taking all of those conspiracies and weaving them into one world. And, you know, that's what that novel is. And that's where the majority of this Illuminati stuff actually comes from. So, like, when you see all this, like, QAnon stuff, and they're really, like, going into it, even Assassin's Creed is largely based off of this stuff. There's a lot of things that it's influenced in one way or another, for better or worse. But everyone, like, tries to shift Kerry Thornley into, like, Oswald's buddy, but he actually did this other thing that ended up changing the world in a very weird way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
should we look at these current affairs ones?
Okay, so those might be a bit much, but I would recommend watching a little bit of it to kind of getting the drift. Again, this is him in the winter of his life. He's been homeless at this point. I think he'll say anything, and he's gotten advanced with his mental illness. But Sandra London was like, no, you gotta go on current affairs. And I want you guys to see this video. Okay. Oh my God, just the 90s of it.
Okay, so we'll check these out, and then I'm going to have to take a small break.
But let's
look at these. This is Kerry Thornley on Current Affair.
If you want to take the break during, that would work too.
Yeah, well, I want to see it. I want to see this.
Fair enough.
I just did the sound. And by the way, Chad, did you notice how I just expertly did that sound effect? Identical. I'm a man of many sounds.
The President of the United States is dead.
Now, A Current Affair continues its own investigation into the assassination of John F. Kennedy with more startling revelations from secret government files. Exclusive, A Current Affair solves one of the great mysteries of that day in Dallas. The case of 3 hobos arrested and released by police. Were they part of a conspiracy? After 28 years, their story is finally told.
So they took us off on that end, took us through here, marched us to jail.
Exclusive, another conspirator who raced his friend, Lee Harvey Oswald, to kill the president.
I wanted him dead. I would have shot him myself. I would have stood there with a rifle and pulled the trigger if I had the chance.
We'll talk to JFK director Oliver Stone.
I feel like I'm on the right track and I'm pushing the truth in the Warren Commission will.
And we'll hear what America thinks. Should the secret files be opened?
If they hide enough stuff from us long enough.
I think that they should be open.
It was dogged detective work that led us to Harold Doyle, and it's led us to another mystery man as well.
I wanted to shoot him. I wanted to assassinate him very much.
He was Lee Harvey Oswald's buddy and co-conspirator. Now he tells of the race to kill Kennedy. That's next.
Thank you, Nerney, for continuing your sub. Thank you very much.
John was murdered. He was murdered in a dirty and a foul conspiracy.
We'll have more from JFK director Oliver Stone later in the show. But first, the end of one man's 28-year vow of silence. A shadowy figure named Kerry Thornley helped Kennedy investigators get inside the mind of his buddy, Lee Harvey Oswald. Thornley testified to the Warren Commission, but like their secret files, his lips have been sealed ever since, until today. Steve Dunleavy was the first man since Chief Justice Earl Warren to hear Thornley's bombshell story.
First time in decades, he emerges from the shadows. Grim shadows that have cast a pall over a man with a frightening secret. A terrible boast.
I wanted to shoot him. I wanted to assassinate him very much.
You've just seen and heard a man called Kerry Thornley.
He does look like a Civil War
background
reenactor.
of New Orleans is his headquarters for a deranged plot to assassinate President John F. Kennedy. His one regret, his good friend and Marine buddy Lee Harvey Oswald got there before him. In fact, he was so close to Oswald that he even wrote a book about him before the assassination. Now again, listen to the words of Kerry Thornley and shut up.
I wanted him dead. I would have shot him myself. I would have stood there with a rifle.
Yeah, so the sound kind of takes a dip here for a little bit, because VHS, but it will be back eventually. Sorry.
Imaginable. A race to kill President Kennedy. And Thornley wants the world to know he tried his hardest.
I told the Secret Service, I said the only reason I didn't kill him was because I wasn't in the right place at the right time with a gun.
The world met Kerry Thornley in 1964 when he testified before the Warren Commission. In 1968, New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison charged him with perjury in a conspiracy to kill President Kennedy. Garrison got it all wrong.
If I met him, I would say, Garrison, you should not have gone after me for perjury. You should have gone after me for conspiracy to commit murder. I did not commit perjury. However, I was involved in a conspiracy to murder John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, you see, you're right, Lodane, that it seems like at this point in his life, he's like mixing up fact and fiction. He's all the different stories that he's told himself and he's told other people over the years. It's all swirling together into this kind of weird melange.
Yeah, and as you can see, like this absolute narcissist, in my opinion, allegedly, Sandra London. Like, look at her. Look at what she did to the video.
Yeah.
Like, she's just like she was not an associate producer. She was a consultant. Like, she's such a grifter. And, you know, this is why we stick apart, because I can't stand most Discordians. Jesus fucking Lord. But yeah, she manipulated this man in the end of his life, in my opinion, allegedly, and got him in this position and encouraged his, like, you know, mental illness to basically become even worse. I mean, Garrison came after this guy like relentlessly for a very long time, brought him into the public eye, and it never really stopped. And then, you know, here we are. Like, no one takes care of people like this. No one pays them for being sudden celebrities. He couldn't monetize it, you know, other than writing a couple books.
Yeah.
And so, as he started, like, trying to uncover things, like, he started thinking, like, at one time he told Robert Anton Wilson, he's like, man, for all I know, you're a CIA agent. Like, I don't know. Like, my world is so uncertain. You know, it's like that kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
his world was so absolutely uncertain that it's hard to live like that when there's no ground under you.
I wonder if she's linked to the feds.
Oh God, I have no idea. I don't know enough about her, but here's what I do know is her website is done by Reverend Loveshade, the disinformation artist. So I don't need to say any more on that. She's already associated with a guy who happily spreads disinformation in this very small niche community. It's the fandom people didn't even know what to do with us when we got into it. They're like, this is such a weird little group. We don't know. So, but yeah, like he totally started merging things, and I mean, you guys are just looking at my future. Like I'm just gonna start becoming yeah, I totally was gonna take Biden out. Yeah, I planned it. It's gonna be great.
Oh boy.
All right, yeah, finish this because
Okay,
it's actually kind of fun. Just the current affairs part is super fun.
Of the assassin, the basis of Oliver Stone's hit movie JFK, the former district attorney alleges that Thornley impersonated Oswald to set him up as a patsy in the assassination.
Jim Garrison thought that I was impersonating Oswald, or that I was coaching others to do so as to frame Oswald for the Kennedy assassination so that the true assassins could escape. Garrison thought that I
double-crossed Oswald, that I set Oswald up for the assassination, which offended me enormously. I would gladly have killed Kennedy. I wouldn't have betrayed Oswald, though.
Thornley is still angry. He would never betray Oswald. They were in the same Marine outfit in 1959. They looked alike. They thought alike. And they acted off the same script of life. They were buddies. Did you like it?
He was intellectual. He was well-read. He was intelligent.
Is this the next one? Okay.
You like that editing?
Yeah, very nice.
Now, a current affair continues its own investigation into the...
They looked alike. They thought alike. And they acted off the same script of life. They were buddies.
They were
Did you like
buddies.
it?
He was intellectual. He was well-read. He was intelligent. He was funny. Yeah, I liked him a lot, you know.
Thornley, as a young man, liked Oswald so much that from this apartment on Napoleon Street in the French Quarter of New Orleans, wrote this book called Idle Warriors, in which Oswald appears as the hero. And that was 1 year before the assassination. That's right, 1 year before the assassination.
Kerry Thornley knew Oswald during a very important period of Oswald's life, the period in the Marine Corps after he returned from Japan and just prior to his defection to Russia.
David Lifton wrote the authoritative book Best Evidence, a scathing attack on the Warren Commission which found that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman.
What makes Kerry, of course, really crucial historically is that he knew Lee Harvey Oswald and had his manuscript.
That manuscript landed Thornley a grueling session in front of the Warren Commission. Then, an indictment by D.A. Jim Garrison. The book was locked away as part of evidence, but now is being published for the first time, 29 years later, by this man, Ron Bonds, of Illuminate Press, Georgia.
My association with him has never led me to believe that he was not credible.
Behind the fiesta that is always Mardi Gras, Kerry Thornley always preferred the back streets. Right now, when you think of John F. Kennedy being assassinated, do you feel anything
My
inside
only
you?
regret is that it led to the war in Vietnam. That's my only regret about it at all. Other than that, I'd as soon shoot him all over again. You know, I think he was a bastard. I still think he was a bastard for different reasons now than I did then.
Thornley's boasting hatred of Kennedy, his friendship with Oswald in the Marines, the fact he lionized Oswald in his manuscript and bore a credible resemblance to the accused killer, well, that got Thornley an invitation to a party he desperately wanted to join.
I knew this guy named Slim. About a week or two after the Bay of Pigs invasion, he called me up. He says,
They would meet in Thornley's apartment on Napoleon Street, where Slim introduced him to a man whose name has been withheld, but he was nicknamed Brother-in-Law.
Brother-in-law and I shook hands, and brother-in-law said, Kerry, I think John F. Kennedy is a menace to this country, and I think he ought to be assassinated. And I said, so do I.
At Katir's restaurant in the famous French Quarter, where Brother-in-Law was known, few tears were shed the day John F. Kennedy was killed. Carlos Castillo, Thornley's friend, was brutally frank.
I was happy.
You were happy that President
Yeah,
Kennedy
yeah, I was very happy. He was happy too. A lot of people were happy. Only
particularly us.
You're not supposed to say that.
You're a very honest man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was happy. No, hell no, man. No, yeah, man. Not the only one who's been assassinated.
As New Orleans continued its 24-hour-a-day party, Thornley and brother-in-law plotted the ways to kill Kennedy for the next year, up until 2 weeks before he was actually assassinated.
2 weeks before the assassination, he says, the only remaining question is who to frame for it. And I says, why do you want to frame somebody for it? And he says, people need answers. He says, I figure I'll frame some jailbird. And I said, why don't you frame some communist? And he smirked, you know. I have my suspicions that whoever I was talking to out there in Harahan, Louisiana, was at the center of the conspiracy. Whoever he was, yeah. The man I call brother-in-law, I think he was. Close to it, if not at the very center.
Thornley, not surprisingly, is an extreme right-winger. However, he has never risen to a job higher than a doorman. He says he hated Kennedy because he believed the president had tried to exclude extremists from the political process.
I felt he was dangerous about freedom of speech and about economics.
The Warren Commission, why didn't you talk about your conspiracies previously?
I talked to everybody who'd listen about killing Kennedy the whole time I was down here for 3 years, you know. They didn't ask me, I wasn't going to bring it up, you know. It didn't seem relevant. I thought Oswald did it anyway. It didn't seem relevant to me, you know.
Thornley says he no longer believes killing people is the solution to political problems.
She says that almost disapprovingly. She's like, "Oh, you believe this?
Yeah,
coward."
It's so funny. Like, yeah, he hypothesized about it and bullshitted about it. Like, who hasn't sat around and talked about like the ways that they would like kill someone in authority? Like, you know, or even just hypothetically, like when you hear about an assassination like this and you're like, that's how they did it? Really? I would have done it a little differently. But like, he got involved in so many of these conversations with people that just, I don't know, it's kind of strange. Like, I can't imagine being at a party and someone just drops by and is like, hey man, if you had to kill Biden right now, how would you go about it? Like,
yeah.
And it just kept happening over and over. And it seems like, yeah, we got some mafia people and possibly some agents involved. I put their names in chat. I don't know why they censored them. It's public information. Slim Brooks and Gary Kirstein is the name used, you know, for brother-in-law. I don't even know if that's his real name. So in chat also, that's a good, like, neutral educational source of information, the Spartacus Educational. And this is an interview with Adam Gorightly, who's basically the best biographer for Kerry Thornley, if you guys are interested in more information.
Well, the Kerry pranksters, that's interesting, too, because another thing that this reminded me of is Ken Kesey.
Oh, yeah.
And the Merry Pranksters, the famous, like, the Ken Kesey's crew in the 60s, and who wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and other classic works of the era.
Yeah, it really wouldn't surprise me if we found a connection there. That's the thing, is like, this is all tied to, like I said, Tim Leary, who, by the way, anytime you want to talk about Tim Leary, I can totally do this again. It's all connected. I'd love to talk about Robert Anton Wilson sometime.
Well, we can do it again.
All of this stuff is connected. They all kind of believed in Jung's thing of synchronicity, which is one of, like, you know, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, Jung had a couple good ideas, and synchronicity is one of them that I just find to be true once you notice it. I put a list of Discordian things in chat. Most of them are just kind of mind games, like the 23 Enigma and stuff like that, but we all know what that is. We all know what the 23 Enigma is. We all know what the Illuminati is. We all know what Flat Earth is. Those were all, they call them jakes instead of jokes, but those were all Discordian jakes.
Okay.
And they all just went too far, so.
Yeah, interesting. And it's interesting, too, because Sea of Noise in the chat says the report claiming Thornley was a fascist accelerationist, which kind of, I see that kind of how you would get that impression, but that's exactly how you describe Manson as well, right? Manson kind of trying to start a race war. That's what the whole Manson murders were allegedly about, which we know the CIA was I'm sure involved in as well. It's a kind of interesting crossover there too.
Yeah, and Red Jam, I just want to let you know, the last serious relationship that I was in, the last long-term relationship I was in, it was really chill, and we were cool, and we had a lot of fun until he started watching YouTube on his PlayStation, and it kept recommending it. It was before they fixed the algorithm and he went down the wormhole.
Oh shit.
And he became a flat earther. The minute he said flat earth, I left. Yeah. Like, I mean, you know, like within, it was a short period later, I was like, okay, dude, like I couldn't talk him out of it. Like, no matter what I did, he wasn't the brightest. He was cute, you know.
A himbo.
Yeah, he was a himbo. We actually all came to terms with that. I don't know if he did, but we all came to terms with that at some point. I tend to shoot above my league. You know, I have a lot of guy friends. I know what my number is out of 10. I tend to definitely shoot out of my league, but as you know, we're approaching middle age. I eventually had to get a himbo in there. Like, I couldn't just have them all be like smart and equal and you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, shout out to the Short Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lodane, thanks so much for doing this segment. It was really interesting. I've as much as I've explored some of these connections, I've never heard of this guy. It's really fascinating, these connections, especially when you tie in the whole the whole hippie movement and the Leary, Ken Kesey, Manson.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's just like,
I mean,
man, there's so many connections there.
And yeah, that's the thing is, did they create like a basically a counterculture movement to do the opposite of what the counterculture movement was supposed to do? Did they use it as a propaganda tool? It's starting to look like yes. So
well, and it diverted young people away from communism, right? It's like we can be counterculture, but it's not any way threatening capital. It's not in any way threatening the ruling class at all.
Oh yeah, at one point, Robert Ansell's, look, we all have our journeys. Like when I was like 19, I was really stupid and did not understand what a political dog whistle was, and like I just wanted to smoke weed. So I was like, whoa, libertarian sounds cool. I don't know, Drew Carey likes it. Why not? Let's take a look at that.
Well, yeah, when you see Ron Paul just talking about how ending the foreign interventions and ending the drug war, it's like, damn, this guy's cool. Like, what's wrong with this? And then, of course, all this other stuff is hidden beneath the surface.
Yeah, and by the way, like Rand Paul, that's a toupee, right? I mean, like, I don't mind hair pieces. I love hair pieces. I'll totally use them myself. But like, come on, like, I don't know, man. And he certified himself as an ophthalmologist. I would not trust my eyes with that man. He just created his own organization to certify himself. I mean, I respect that. I do that kind of stuff. I have a micronation. I totally do that stuff. So, okay, I'm babbling.
You got to give it to him. You got to give it up for him.
Yeah, we can totally do this again on various other people. I'm an obsessive person, and I can just like spew nonsense all day. So,
well, it was great to talk to you. It was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed having you come on. Assistant producer of the Robert So show, Lodane.
That's me.
Yeah,
I'm putting it on LinkedIn, everyone.
Yeah, this is LinkedIn official. We're making it LinkedIn official. Okay, well, thanks, Lodane. I'm going to take a little break now, but I appreciate it a lot, Lodane. It was really cool to have you on the show.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Okay. I'll see you in the chat. Okay. Thank you so much, Lodane. Wow, that was tremendous.